Hello YouTube, Sean here. Thanks for joining me for another Propsmith video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to turn this into this. That's right, it's the Dark Knight Two-Face coin as used by Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, in the film The Dark Knight. It's sort of all in the description, isn't it? Now, when I originally set out to make this replica, I was going to take this real 1922 piece dollar and cast it and mold it into a two-headed thing and mess one side up to make it a two-face coin. But that turned out to be really sort of difficult, and I never got proper results, and it also ended up being a lot more expensive than just buying this fantastically nice two-headed, not quite silver dollar on eBay. They can be found for $10 pretty regularly. Just search for Two-Face coin or Harvey Dent coin, and you'll find them for $10 usually. And it's got a real nice, well, okay, this cutting mat is a really bad example, but here, they're got a really nice metallic sound. On par with the silver one, not quite as nice, but they feel great. I mean, there's no cheapness to this at all. So here's the deal. For $10, you can't go wrong for this thing. And turning it into this is pretty simple, and I'm going to go over it. So first, here are a few things you need. One of the most important things, a nice Dremel with a cutoff wheel. Or, a not nice Dremel. They don't have to be super great, just workable. The other most important thing you're going to need, Liberon iron paste. There might be other brands that you can use, but this stuff is honestly fucking magic. It's made for cast and wrought iron, and it's really not very expensive, but it's great. You'll also need some quadruple zero steel wool and some. I like to use a sanding foam like this. Pretty much any kind of sandpaper will do, but this is really nice for this application. And obviously you're going to need some reference. Here I have an iPad set up at the end of my workspace with an image of one of the screen used coins that I will be keeping my eye on while I Dremel this bitch. And while I Dremel it, I will need this. This is just something to hold the coin steady whilst I Dremel. You can use anything that works for that purpose for you. This works great for me. And obviously you don't need an iPad for your reference photo. You can just print that out if you like. And I will provide a link to the reference photo that I use in the description for the video below there. So we have our two-headed coin, and you'll notice it's very shiny. Here's the real silver dollar. Compared to that, it's really, really gleamy, and we're going to take care of that as well as making the back all Harvey'd. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clamp this in. Now on this particular one, the In God We Trust has a little less detail on this side than on this side. And since one side gets pretty messed up anyway, I want to make the side with the less detail the messed up side, just to deal with that. And while I screw this in, let me apologize for my audio. I have a really nice blue Yeti microphone that I typically use for these, but due to how much I have to use my hands in this video, it was getting in the way, so I had to just use my standard iPhone headphones. So apologies in advance if the audio is not as good as it could be. But that is a big microphone. So what I'm doing here is, aside from just clamping it in there, you want it to be a little raised up, because if you'll see, some of these gouges we're going to put in it go down at the edge, about halfway through. And that is as it should be, so we want to allow ourselves some room for that to get in there without scratching up our clamp too much, or whatever sort of holdy down mechanism you're using. Alright, let's get that kind of tight in there, and you'll see got a little bit of a raised lip, but still enough to hold it in there pretty steadily. It's not wobbling around or anything. And then here's where the reference comes in. Pretty handy. I want to have that front and center in front of me so that I can make sure that all the marks are as screen accurate as possible. And another thing that you might want to do is actually do this beforehand. You might want to take like a fine Sharpie and just mark some of the spots and fill that in so that you don't have to quite look up. You can see I've already made one, and some of these marks are lining up where I've cut into my thing a little bit. So there's a little, nope, it's about here. There's a thing, and then there's a pretty recognizable line here, and then a huge line through the eyes. Some smaller stuff here. Real big gash across her mouth, across her throat, another one about there. Big gash here. Right at the Y. There's something on the edge. So that's a good start. So let's just take this damn Dremel to this thing and see what we get. Okay, so these are all the most recognizable lines, but I'm gonna random it up a bit as well. Oh, I missed this big one here. So I'm going to go over it a bit, just a bit randomly. And it really doesn't look like much right now, but you will see that we will definitely get there. I'm going to tweak this just a little bit over here. Little roughing up of the edges. And from here, you want to take that Libron iron paste, or brand name of your choice. And this is the main reason I'm wearing the rubber gloves, is because This shit is messy as hell. So I'm just going to take a paper towel. Dab it in there. And we're just going to liberally smear this all over. Sort of dab it. We want it a bit uneven and rough at this point. And this is actually going to sit here for about 4 hours to dry completely. And then we're going to do some sandpapering and buffing to it. But you really want to make sure that you get inside all those crevices and cracks that we put there, because those are going to remain black. Don't want any silver showing through those. So dab, 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 make it look crappy, and we'll make it look less intentionally crappy when we return in a few hours. And man, it would be so great if I stopped this right here and just magically it was 4 hours later, but this is my cell phone, and so that's not going to happen because I got to go places and I got to take my phone with me, and I don't think it's going to line up perfectly. But hey, can't win them all. So, let's do a less than magic cut and see you back in a bit. Actually, that's a bit too much on there. All right, and we'll be right back. And we're back. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that sanding sponge and we're just going to sort of go over the top of this now that it's all dry. And looking at the reference photo there, you see that it's mostly black. There's just a few details that come through, mostly in the raised area, such as the face and some of the lettering. So we just take this straight across the top like that, then we'll get through to that. And you know, it may take a little bit, but you see we're starting to get through there. And we're going to want to direct this a little bit as we progress, instead of covering the whole thing like this, as we want to uncover some of the lettering, like up here in Liberty, without really getting the underneath stuff. There's not a lot on the edges either, so we'll keep that pretty thin. So as you see, we're starting to get some dirt on our fingers because I forgot to put my gloves back on. But we're also starting to get some definition in the face. We really want those spikes to come through in the crown area. And Liberty in 1922 we want to shine through. Now we're not going to get a lot of the In God We Trust because there wasn't a lot of detail to get there. But as you can see, this is already looking pretty good. We do want to bring out some more of this middle section of the face. I'm going to sort of focus my sanding on that area a bit, because that's really dark in there. I want it to look as organic as possible, and I do want to really get in here and check out this 1922. But I want to try to keep this flat so that I don't rub away the stuff around the 1922 any more than absolutely necessary. Okay, here, got a 2 coming through over here. So work on that a little bit more. And if it does get to be too thick to really do anything with, you can take a little screwdriver and sort of scrape some away a bit. That's helpful. And I also have this little brush, which is helpful for making it a bit more organic looking. And you can see there's sort of too much being wiped away in some parts, and we're going to take care of that as well with just a light reapplication of the iron paste. So I'm actually going to take a bit of a paper towel and rub down this area by the 1922 to try to bring it out a bit, because this is really thick at that point. There we go. It's starting to actually be visible now. We'll sand that a bit. Need a little bit more on that one. Okay, so now, as you can see from my other finished one, it's got a lot more darkness to it than this one does. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take our iron paste, and instead of using a paper towel this time, I'm going to use a paintbrush. And this stuff will not come off a paintbrush, so use a cheap paintbrush that you don't mind destroying. And I wouldn't normally use one this big, but I've been using this stuff for several projects recently, and I've gone through all my cheap paintbrushes. This is my last one. So I'm just going to go over this lightly, and instead of giving it 4 hours as you would for a full coating per the instructions on the can, we're just going to give this a couple of minutes, and I'm going to actually get as much excess off of here as I can and go over it and lighten it up even further. And that's going to give us a nice less than consistent finish on there to make it a little more realistic with varying degrees of burniness. So I'm just going to blow on that a little bit. Then we can knock it back a little bit more. And I'm going to give that just a brief time to dry up a bit. Okay, so that's dry to the touch now, which is really all we need. So we're going to take our extra fine steel wool. That's quadruple 0. We're just going to sort of go over it with that. You'll see, because it's a thin layer on top, what we've already taken out is going to come away pretty easily. And I'm also going to take this because we do want a little variation so that it's not one consistent texture. And having a look at the reference photo, this is pretty much the direction of the strokes. Come across this way at a 30 to 45-degree angle, somewhere in there. Now you can see it's really coming along. Now I'm going to take the steel wool and come into that 1922 and try to get some detail back from there. And that looks pretty good there to me. And we can even get, see a little bit of this God We Trust. There's not a lot of it, but we can get some detail out of it. And I think that's pretty good for that side. It looks pretty organically fucked up. And it's gonna be a little finicky until it can dry for that full 4 hours. So I want to be really careful with it. I'm just gonna go around the edges here. There's lots of gunk in the edge that we do not want. So the edge is going to be pretty much clean, is the idea here. And we do have some work to do on the other side, because as you'll see, that is just way too bright. Because you don't want to go just by a prop, you also want to have a look at the real world equivalent, and that's just way brighter than the real thing. That's a real 1922 piece dollar. So I'm going to just hold this as carefully as I can while I clean up the edge with a paper towel. And you may need to scrub away a bit at that. And it doesn't need to be perfectly clean. You don't want it perfectly clean because obviously some of that is gonna, be burnt in accordance with the trauma that befell this coin and its bearer. But this other side, we do want to get as clean as humanly possible. So actually put this on a cloth here. And we'll get that as scrubbed as we can without moving around the other half, because we don't want to rub any more off of that than we already have. Okay, and what we're going to do here is we're going to go into the edge of this canister of the iron paste where the paste is a bit thicker. We're going to get the lightest layer we can on our brush. We're just going to brush it over really lightly like that and get it down in all the details. So it's just barely more than a dusting. And most of that we're going to take back off. That's just going to knock down that brightness a little bit and also highlight the details that are there. I'm going to go so far as to dab that with a paper towel. Double check our other side. Still looks good. Alright, so I'm going to let this sit for maybe 5 minutes, like that, and then I'll be right back with you guys. Alright, now that's dry, so I'm going to take my steel wool again, and only my steel wool. I'm just going to go over this pretty lightly and just buff it back out to a shine, but importantly, a shine with a teeny bit of a patina. And actually, it's really hard to mess this part up because you really have to work to do away with the part that brings out those details. You can pretty much only underdo it. So if we bring back our, oh, got a little bit of schmutz here. It just looks like dirt. We don't want it to look like dirt. We want it to look like a realistic aging. And that's brought it way down from the ultra shininess that it was before. Could maybe use a little bit more knocking down because it's really pretty dark, like around the edge of her face. But I think that's good. This might have just overdone it a little bit. This brush is almost totally dry. So now this extra layer is almost nothing. And I can pretty much just do that right away without even waiting for it to dry. And that will give us an almost perfectly looking, realistically aged coin. Oh man, I got some on the real coin. And then the very last thing I'm going to do to this is just take some of this steel wool and go around the edge a little bit and get some more of that out. Being careful, again, not to smudge the burn side before it's fully cured. So, there you have it. A two-face coin with very little time put into it, honestly. That was a little thick right there. That's better. There. Very little time, very little money. A $10 investment plus whatever tools. And this stuff, which I cannot speak highly enough of. It's sort of a secret weapon of the prop industry in terms of aging metals. And as you can see just in this one prop, it can be used in a variety of ways to get a variety of effects. Totally fucked up burn, mild aging. Excellent. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, like, all that stuff. Dislike if you want to dislike, that's fine. No accounting for taste. Just keep creating and have fun, guys. Bye.